Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can,
All
Lucy.
right. And you got the questions from me, right?
I did.
All right.
Thank
I'm
you.
not going to ask them all. We won't have enough time. So I'll pick a few.
Whatever you got, and throw it my way. No problem.
All right. And I see we have some attendees. So before we get started, we would love to see who's all joining. So if you could put your company name and also your location within the country, that would be great. In the chat. That's what I meant. I don't see Danyel.
She was here. I saw her name, but then I didn't. Her.
I feel like we need to have background music before we get started.
Some elevator tunes.
Exactly. Hey, Shireen.
You want me to send a message to Danyel?
Yeah, let me see. Is she looks like she's here. Hi, Laura.
There she
There
is.
she is. Hi, Danielle.
Hello, how are you? After I entered left the speaker room, I had some technical difficulties, but I'm here.
I did too. I won't lie. I was a little scared.
I was gonna go into panic mode.
Yeah, I was panicking a bit too. All right. Well, we'll get promptly started. And thank you everybody for joining us today. And welcome to our breakout panel session, Building a $1 Million Business in a Pandemic. Before we get started, we would just love to see who all is joining us today. So if you could put your company name and the location within the country that you're joining us from, that would be really appreciated. So the coronavirus pandemic has affected businesses large and small in profound ways. Businesses across most industries have really been upended overnight by shifts in every aspect of their business, from shifts in how the consumers behave to how we interact with customers, supply chains, how employees work, etc. Although the pandemic will subside someday, many of these shifts are most likely here to stay. And for businesses that are resilient and nimble, the changing business landscape present really great opportunities. So my name is Huang. I'm the program director for Impact Ventures. And for the last 15 years, I've also been a serial entrepreneur. On our panel today, we have two wonderful powerhouse entrepreneurs who have remained resilient and seized the opportunity to reinvent and persevere during this pandemic. We're going to hear about their experiences working through the shifting business and capital landscape during the pandemic and how they were able to continue growing and scaling their businesses. So ladies, welcome.
Thank you
so much, Lucy.
Thank you for being here. So to the audience, we may have time, we'll just see how this goes at the end to take a couple questions from the audience. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I'm good. Now that I found you guys, I was in a virtual purgatory, I guess. I was in another environment. So
we all all
you
had issues, Mandy.
you didn't miss
So
anything.
glad you're here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. We're just getting started. So we're about to get to the intro. Thank you, Mandy. So drop your questions in the chat, and if we have some time left in the panel, we'll go ahead and pick a few to ask the ladies. So let's go ahead and do some introductions. First up, we have Dr. Lyndsey Harper, who is the founder and CEO of Rosy. And we have Miss Danyel Surrency Jones, and she is the co-founder and CEO of Powerhandz. And last but not the least, we have Mandy Price, who is the co-founder and CEO of Kanarys, Inc. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
All right, well, let's get started. So the first question I have, I'm going to kick this over to Danyel first. If you could tell us about your experience in building and growing your business. So specifically, what drove you to start your business and what were your motivations?
Yeah, so, I look back 6 years from now and I'm like, what were we thinking, right? Growing and scaling a business in athletic training, fitness, and then branching and scaling into rehab with no blueprint. Man, it has not been easy. So, and you'll see when I answer my questions, I'm very, very transparent because I want people to know that, this journey is not for the faint at heart. So, when we started this business, it truly was about passion, meeting a solution, right? And creating a business model that we knew was scalable. We didn't realize at that time how scalable it was, but we had that equation, so we jumped and we started Powerhandz really based on, one vision and one mission, and that was how do we create innovative training products in the basketball space that help improve overall performance. My co-founder is a former professional basketball player, and we coupled his skills and in business with my skills from the medical device industry with several executive positions across sales, marketing, operations, etc. And being a nerd, of course, in business. And we decided we were going to make a difference in the sports industry. And very quickly, once we launched into basketball, we saw that same need across multiple sports verticals. So we then scaled into those multiple sports verticals, and we then scaled into multiple countries when we realized that our solution, by looking at the analytics, was something that could be a global solution. So our true motivation and passion was about meeting a need and serving that has then turned into a scalable business model.
That's fantastic. It sounds like passion was a big driver in the business.
It better be for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, absolutely. You really in order to persevere and really just have that faith and see things through. Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and also ask Lyndsey, Dr. Harper, if you could also answer that question. What drove you to start your business and what were your motivations?
Certainly. And I also, Danyel, like you, love transparency because I think it does the same thing that you were saying, like it communicates how tough this can be, but I think it also breaks down barriers for people who might, think, oh, I can't do that. I don't have the skill set. Because when we're transparent about how much, we didn't know and still don't know, I think it really can kind of level the playing field. So thank you for that. I love that. My background is that I am an OBGYN. So I'm a women's health, just lover. I love taking care of women. I love having long-term relationships with my patients. And, I felt like I was doing a pretty decent job, but my patients would share with me, especially after we had known each other for a while, that they were having issues with sexual problems. And that these issues, for example, low desire, orgasmic dysfunction, were causing problems in their lives for their own self-esteem and self-image, increasing levels of anxiety, depression, and also relationship, which could lead to family disruptions as well. And so when I was encountering this in my practice, I didn't really know how to help my patients because I hadn't been trained. This is not a focus that we ever talk about in society. I'm sure some people in here are like, oh my gosh, what panel did I come into right now? And, we don't talk about it in medical school or in residency training, but 43% of women have a sexual problem or complaint. And so we're going around ignoring this for those women in sharp contrast to what we're doing for men, right? Which is getting all these medications approved by the FDA and covered by insurance. Urologists spend half of their time on men's sexual dysfunction, but the same is not true for women. So when I had that epiphany and these, my patients whom I love are crying for help, and all I've got is advice like drink a glass of wine or go on vacation, right? I could not tolerate that. And so I really became very motivated to learn everything that I could about evidence-based interventions for women's sexual dysfunction. Comes to find out there are plenty of them. It's just we don't talk about them. And so the goal of my company, which is Rosy, is to really connect women who need these resources to the resources themselves. And that's what we do on our platform. So we launched almost 2 years ago. We're about to have our second birthday. And so we raised our first round of funding right before the pandemic hit. And it's been a really crazy year, but I think we've all learned a lot of great lessons and just like you said, really motivated by our passion. I can't imagine starting a business that's not mission oriented because, without that mission and passion, there's some tough days. And that's what really definitely keeps us going for sure.
That's wonderful. Congratulations on your second birthday.
Oh, thank you. It's on Valentine's Day, so it's coming right up.
Yeah, that is awesome. So it sounds like, another big theme here is it sounded like all of you know the problem at hand, and you really understand like the scope that you're working with, and therefore being able to come up with a great solution. So with that, I'd like to also see if Mandy, if you can answer the question on what motivated you and what drove you to start your business.
Yeah. So Lyndsey and Danyel have really hit it on the head already as far as you got to have that passion for the business that you're creating. And similar to, brought up, we started Kanarys in 2018. I started with 2 co-founders, which I highly recommend if you're thinking about doing a business to have a co-founder, because it is very, very difficult. But we started Kanarys based off of our own experiences that we had in the workplace, not only as people of color, but we have challenges, but also we were all very involved with our companies or law firms' diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. I had been on my firm's diversity committee for years, same thing on the women's task force, on the hiring committee, as well as leading up the Black ERG group, and was very frustrated by the lack of progress that we had from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint. I felt that a lot of the diversity initiatives, not only did my company have, but that most companies had, were very surface level, that we didn't have the metrics or the tools or the resources to really drive a comprehensive strategy that went beyond celebrating Black History Month or Pride Month or those kind of things. So really wanted to equip those HR leaders and those chief diversity officers with the tools that they needed, so that we were looking not just at diversity, but actually being able to measure equity and inclusion, being able to have benchmarking capabilities. And so we started Kanarys and pulled together a team of not only DI experts, but data scientists, as well as people with those deep technology skills to build the same kind of tools that every other business function has. The idea of not having a way to measure your success in accounting or marketing or sales is unheard of. And if we're going to take diversity, equity, inclusion seriously, if it is going to be a key business priority of organizations, then we have to equip those individuals with the tools that they need to be successful.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So the next thing is, it's kind of the big elephant in the room, right? We are still in the midst of this pandemic. But thinking back to when it all started and the shutdowns happened, how do you feel like I know you're shaking your head. How have your businesses adapted and pivoted? That's like the key word of the pandemic, right? Pivot. But what were some how have you pivoted during the pandemic, and what were some key decisions that you remember that you had to make things work and still grow? So I'm going to ask Dr. Harper if you could answer that, be the first to answer that.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, for everyone, I think it was just such a shock. Like, I remember the Friday before sort of everything closed down, just not even, and I don't know how anyone could understand the gravity of how much the world would change so quickly. But I think that sort of there was that first phase of shock and like, what will this do to the business? For us, we are a mobile health platform. So, there were definitely some losses but also some wins for us, because I think for us, the worst thing that happened really was that the PR cycles got really interrupted, right? So we had 78% growth in February, and then came March. And it's like, okay, well, all of that stuff is, like everyone has to know facts and scientific evidence about the pandemic. We need to educate ourselves. We need to know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. But with that, if we're spreading messages about the companies that we are working so hard every day to build and to get the word out, though that message is going to get lost, at least temporarily, right? And so I think adjusting to that, finding ways to really engage the customers that we already had, which was different than the growth plan that we had, which was to get, to grow massively very quickly new customers. And so that time for us, the way that we, sort of pivoted the way we were thinking is that instead of, because these cycles have been interrupted, we're not going to reach those new people. So how can we most effectively serve the people that are already on the platform right now? And we did that through a few key product decisions, which actually really paid off. So we were able to look back analytically and see, okay, we can see that actually user behavior has changed during the pandemic due to, how much our world has changed and how sort of insular our lives are at this moment. So then we were able to make some product changes to parallel those user behavior changes and really, offer more value to the people that were already on the platform, which has been a great gift to us. And I hope to our users as well, throughout this year. The other thing that we were able to do, which I'm proud of and excited about, is we create a lot of content. Our platform is very content heavy. And we used to have everybody record like with a whole studio and a whole shoot. And that's very time intensive. People have to travel. It's cost a lot of money. But we learned how to do it all remotely. And so I think that that's been actually a gift, because we can create a lot more content at a lot lower cost and really increase value of the product. So, there have been a lot of things we've had to do, not to mention, move to an all remote workforce and homeschool children and all of those things. I'm sure that's another topic for another time. But from a business perspective, those were the differentiators for us.
That's great. Well, but it sounds like those were actually changes that and pivots that actually improve your business in the long run.
Absolutely. And had we not had this, we may have not ever sort of had those insights. And another piece, another piece for us is we also offer telehealth, and we had always planned to offer telehealth. And obviously the pandemic has, accelerated that by decades. And so in that way, it's been actually really great.
So accelerated it basically. Yeah. All right. I'd like to ask Mandy if you could also talk about your experience adapting and pivoting during this pandemic as well.
Yeah, I think all businesses have had to pivot during the pandemic. What we saw at the beginning of the COVID outbreak is that a lot of companies actually let go of their D&I staff or slash their diversity, equity, inclusion budgets. And so a lot of the traction, a lot of the discussions or statements of works that we had out just died. And for months and months, we saw very little activity, if any. Companies were really, in an HR perspective, laying off their staff and doing other things like that. And so diversity, equity, inclusion was seen as not on the a business priority at all. And so what we did during that time period, because we knew that during times of crisis more than ever, we need to be supporting our employees. We need to be thinking about inclusion. We need to be thinking about some of the things that Dr. Harper just said. We knew that people were trying to work virtually while also having childcare issues, since there was no safety net or backup system in the sense of being able to have that childcare. So we did a series of webinars where we educated and provided the resources that we knew that those human resource professionals and diversity inclusion professionals needed, in the sense of to be able to support their employee base. And so that webinar series was very, very helpful, and we got great thought leaders and a lot of support that we were able to provide to those professionals that were able to then provide those to their employees. And then what we saw during the summer is, with the death of Mr. Floyd and some of the others, a complete turnaround in the sense of social justice and the activism that we saw there. Many companies take diversity, equity, inclusion as a priority. And we saw organizations kind of with a renewed fervor of trying to hire up those people that they had let go, creating new diversity, equity, inclusion positions, and making public commitments around diversity, equity, inclusion. So since then, we've seen tremendous growth in our company, and organizations really starting to approach diversity, equity, inclusion from a systemic lens for decades, right? Organizations simply kind of equated diversity, inclusion, any issues they had, to a pipeline problem, as opposed to structurally within their organization, policies, practices, procedures that needed to be changed in order to not produce these inequities. And so the Kanarys platform was always set up to address these from a systemic and institutional standpoint. A lot of the assessments, the benchmarks, all that we do is helping organizations understand how they can use the data and the research-based best practices to ensure that their organization is inclusive. And so it's been tremendous for us, because now organizations are starting to approach it with that lens.
That's fantastic. It sounds like because you laid the groundwork, that you're now really at the forefront, of this conversation, as well as now, a lot of the attention that now properly is put on this issue. So that's great. So Danyel, if you could tell us a little bit about how you pivoted and adjusted during the pandemic, that would be great.
I'd love to, and I will say, everything. So I can relate to everything Dr. Harper stated. I can relate to everything Mandy has stated. This is what's so awesome. I mean, 2020, it still leaves me kind of speechless, right? And my hands are shaking as I think about it. I mean, in all serious nature, because it started off so amazing. Like, talk about the white elephant in the room. I did my TED talk on the black elephant in the room, which was all about diversity and inclusion. Then we went to the Super Bowl and had some great activations, of course, with our company. And I'll never forget, I came home from the Super Bowl and I posted once and then didn't post for another 6 days. And I said, I don't know what weird virus got me, but I was out, right? And so at that time, had no clue, right, what was going on with COVID. And then quickly, we started over the next 30 days, of course, hearing about, boom, COVID, and then immediately went to shutdown. So from a transparency standpoint, I think, Dr. Harper hit it right immediately. Our world, because our business model is, we cater to camps and clinics, trainers, of course, who are active in gyms, athletic programs, they sell and promote and market our products. Well, all of that was shut down, right? And then, so that's one aspect of the business. Meanwhile, coupled on top of that, I have a 7-year-old who has more energy than the sun, who's now here with me, and a 4-year-old who is autistic, and we're doing telehealth. So I'm now managing that, right, from a real world perspective as to, okay, so how do we take advantage of this opportunity and serve, right? So I really had to look at our business from a standpoint of what is going on in the world and where can we meet people where they need us to meet them. So we looked at our business model, and I will tell you, I'm so thankful that over the last 6 years, when I was told no, right, that I could not get into big retail because we were a double minority owned business that was very different from the Nike, the Under Armours, and the Pumas of the world, I was glad that I said, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and start my e-com platform. So I had a very strong platform for Shopify. I had a platform for Amazon, Walmart.com, Target.com, and then we got into Academy Sports, and it's academysports.com. So because of that e-com structure and because of the no's, I was able to then, when stores were shut down, of course, meet customers from a marketing and advertising standpoint better than I had done before. So by looking at analytics, I then added more budget to my marketing spend. And I was able to do some creative strategies that then ended up doubling and increasing our revenue. We actually then became the one-on-one training tool for kids in their backyards across multiple sports, in their garages, as well as from a fitness standpoint. We then increased and told our story more on the fitness side. So the pandemic, as you know, challenging as it was, we were able to take our business model, our marketing strategy, and serve more. And then I will stress this for entrepreneurs, and we all said it, you have to drive your business by analytics. And I think the pandemic, that is going to be one of the lessons that will be learned for all entrepreneurs moving forward. You can't drive your business based on what feels good and looks good. You have to understand what your customers are telling you and respond to that. And that truly, from a pivot side, we did master classes where we had never done them before, right? Instead of talking about our products, we started teaching online and truly partnering with our 400 affiliates that we had and really serving them. So I'm very proud because the pandemic helped us understand our strength in the midst of the crisis.
I think the theme that I'm hearing here is the pandemic drove certain adaptations and changes and certain rigor to your business, but they're here to stay. Those changes, they're improvements to just to build better foundations for your business for growth. So this is inspiring to hear. So as you navigated those changing landscapes, and obviously you're still in the midst of growing all three of your businesses. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're met in the capital markets in terms of raising capital during the pandemic? And we'll start with Mandy.
Yeah, sure. So kind of the pandemic has gone on so long right now that I kind of have to break it out into the phases, right? Because as I noted, there's a portion of the pandemic where our business was suffering heavily, where we didn't really know, we had to make a lot of decisions as far as how do we continue to support our employees and not knowing when our revenue is going to tick up again. So during that time period, we weren't trying to raise capital. We were really just trying to ensure the business was surviving. And then as we weathered that storm and went into the summer and saw the focus that organizations were having on this diversity, equity, inclusion issues, that's when we started to see an uptick in our revenue, uptick in demand from inbound leads and that lead generation and all of that. And during that time is when we decided that we were going to raise our next round. So we raised our seed round during that time period in order to support the growth of our business. We had started to have capacity and bandwidth issues with all of our employees because we were seeing so much demand from companies wanting to learn about the product and use the product. So I would say, the capital raise in fundraising is always difficult. It's never easy. But I think there was a lot more receptivity based off of what people were seeing in the market, because for a long time, right, people, especially within the VC community, did not view DEI tech or any kind of technology that is used to empower diversity, equity, inclusion as very viable. They felt that it was something that it was hard for HR teams and for companies to get behind. And so there's a lot of reluctance for VCs to back any company that is diversity, equity, inclusion focused. So what we saw was that turn on its head. VCs are actively looking for companies in this space. And so I think, to me, what this says as well is kind of what we opened the conversation with is about your motivation and around your passion, because the tides in the markets and what is hot is going to change. And so you have to really be pursuing something based off your own desires as opposed to what do you think is going to be easily fundable, or what's going to, be the most financially successful, because that changes all the time.
Great advice. Danyel, if you could answer that as well. How have you been met with in the capital markets in terms of being able to raise the capital that you need to grow your business during this time?
Yeah, so I will give an overview, not just during this time. I'll say as a whole, being a double minority owned business, it's very tough to raise capital, right? We all see the statistics. We all see the percentage of VC dollars we get. We see how the pandemic really hit Black owned businesses. But here's what's so encouraging, right? Because of the sacrifice that George Floyd made for our country in May, right? We all woke up and we started paying attention to an underrepresented segment that is brilliant. And we started thinking about how the collective brilliance, not just the brilliance of Black-owned businesses, but the brilliance across the board, how we can close the wage gap. And so what I'm encouraged about, prior to the pandemic, we raised about $1.4 million, and it was not tough, right? It was not easy, over the last 6 years. We were in a strategic merger, and we had one large investor that had already given us a portion. That was our lead investor that had already given us a portion of our second round to fund our international expansion and our tech integration. And then the pandemic hit and it halted. So from a funding standpoint, our raise stopped. But instead of focusing on the fact that our fundraise stopped, I really looked at, number one, and this is my encouragement to all businesses. We have to no matter what level you're at in business, you have to let your ego go. Make sure that you're doing things that are mission driven. So if there is an amazing grant that is out there for a woman-owned business or a minority-owned business, you better go for it, right? Because whether that grant is $500 or $50,000, it could get you a connection into that ecosystem that you need to scale your business. So looking at grant funding, right, that doesn't require an equity pool from your business is absolutely huge. So if there are entrepreneurs that are listening on this virtual showcase and they have not tapped into that resource, again, let's let ego go, and shame on you. Let's make sure we tap into that. The second thing is, Mandy hit it. Oh my gosh. Now, right, we are in a situation where people understand that there's, as a Black-owned business, as a woman in business, that we can create technology, we can bring consumer products to market that absolutely serve. So let's truly look at some of the funds that are available that directly target those segments, and let's build relationships, right? Because let's make sure that we understand that in this space of fundraising, that it is absolutely reciprocal. So let's not just ask, right, for the funding and the money. Let's really build and be a part of that ecosystem and see who else is a part of that ecosystem. There may be a strategic opportunity for you all to come together and partner, right? So that's my other advice that I give. So for me, in summary, Lucy, I'm so encouraged because when I gave that TEDx talk, the Black Elephant in the Room, I really feel like I had a crystal ball. I really talked about the brilliance of people coming together, closing the wage gap. And I also talked about big businesses stepping up and helping small businesses. And I'll elaborate on that later, but that's what we're seeing today. So I'm so passionate about it because this has been something that I have been dreaming for years since I worked in corporate America. And finally, it took the sacrifice back in May for us to see this come to fruition.
I love your passion, Danyel. Love it. All of you. Dr. Harper, can you speak a little bit about being able to raise money during this time as well to grow your business?
Well, so luckily, I mean, by the grace of God, we closed like February 26th, 2020. So we have not had to raise during the pandemic. But my one comment was that I wanted to change the name of this panel. And I should have said so before, that we are not building $1 million businesses, y'all. We're building $1 billion businesses. And so that is definitely, top of mind, that we are not thinking small. We are thinking big. And that I think is something that has been sort of coached into me, which is different than when I first started, because I was like, this is a really big need and penny for Benny. And everyone's like, Lyndsey, this has the opportunity to change the world. And I think that businesses that all of us are involved in also as well, and the people who are watching and listening, we have to think as big as we possibly can and not stay siloed in maybe what's been modeled for us or what we think we're capable of. Because if we believe as fervently in our missions as we must, to quit our regular jobs and do these crazy things, then it does have that possibility. So no matter what's thrown our way, pandemic or change in the market, or people don't understand what you're trying to do, that's our opportunity to shine. And funding and fundraising is another sort of example of that. So if you've got the will, it might take a really long time and it might be a lot of no's on the way, but it can definitely be done.
Okay. So there are so many excellent nuggets out of this panel, just out of 3 questions. My last question was going to be, what advice do you listening, especially the up and coming entrepreneurs? And Dr. Harper, you kind of read my mind. Get over to any parting words on this panel for like advice that you can pass down. Mandy, if you could take a crack at that.
So touched on it a lot during this panel, but that sense of passion and your own vision, I think I've heard both of the other panelists say it as well. And I know Danyel's talked about, the journey that she's been on for 6 years, right? And I think it's so important that you never lose sight of your vision or your mission. Things can feel impossible at times, but you have to believe in what you're building. There's going to be many, many, many difficult nights. You will hear many, many no's, but you will reach a turning point if you stay at it, if you stay committed. And so I just say you have to have that tenacity and belief in yourself, because I can't tell you how many people did not believe in what we were doing whatsoever, right? And so you cannot let that deter you, because you have to have that belief. If you don't believe in yourself and what you're building, no one else will. So I would just say to keep at it, to keep motivating yourself and your team. And the only other point I would say is to have some grace with yourselves. The pandemic is extremely difficult. It's very isolating. And I know for those that have children or anyone else that they have any kind of dependent care, is just an extra level of stress. So Danyel, I didn't know you had a 7 and a 4-year-old. I have a 6 and a 4-year-old. And so it has been very—
Let's go drink together.
Yeah.
very,
Mine are 10, 7, and 5.
Okay, oh my God.
Mine is on me. Yeah.
So there's times when I just, have to give some grace to myself and say, everything's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And so those would be my parting words.
Isn't that the truth? I've got 2 kids as well. How old are they? See, I even forget how old they are. 11 and 14. So they're a little easier than yours. But Danyel, any parting words for us?
I'm gonna
advice.
Mandy, thank you. I mean, those 2 nuggets were amazing, and I can so relate. Yeah. I'm gonna go on the theme that Dr. Harper started. We are so conditioned to think small. We're so conditioned, right? And I am encouraging everyone to think about your business from day one when you're writing that business plan as it being global, right? Really think beyond your borders. We didn't do that. And so when I think about lessons learned from day one, right? I remember when we put our 5-year pro forma together, it was about the US market. But we very shortly understood within 2 years of looking at our analytics how we were serving country after country, and now having 87 and now putting strategic business models in place. So again, I want that when you're creating and you're innovating, there are people in other countries that would love that innovation. So think smart about putting the model together, get the right resources, get the right mentors, understanding that these big businesses are stepping up like the Amazon. I have to give kudos to Jeff Bezos. I will be sitting at the table with him one day. I guarantee you that. And we need to take advantage of that opportunity to get that mentorship from those big businesses to learn how to scale appropriately.
Perfect. Now, thank you, ladies. You all are inspirational. And thank you for taking the time today to share your valuable experience and your advice with all of us. And I think this wraps up our session. I believe our next round of pitches, round 2, are about to start. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the showcase. And be sure to check out not only the pitches, but also our expo booths. We have 29 companies that are represented here in our accelerator for the fall 2020 class. And several of our startup track businesses are actually represented in the expo booths, and they've put wonderful material together to really tell you about their businesses. So please check them out. All right. Thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoy.
Bye. Bye, Mandy. Bye, Lucy. Bye, Lyndsey.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.